Hello, everybody. My name is Teresa Castro, and I am a proud alumna and staff member in UNC's Office of Alumni Relations. Thank you all for joining us today for the Alumni Career Panel, LGBTQ plus Alumni Navigating the Workforce. Today, we will learn from and connect with fellow UNC Bears in the working world who identify within the LGBTQIA plus community. Before I introduce you to our panelists, I would like to share a few housekeeping items. First, this event will be recorded and will be available on demand a week after the event on the alumni website. I will post the link in the chat. Second, I invite you all to start building your network and reach out to our panelists after the event. I will post their contact information in the chat towards the end of this virtual event. And third, I will go off screen after introductions and I will return toward the end of the event to provide a closing statement. As we highlight the careers of these alumni, I invite students, fellow staff, and faculty to ask questions through the Q&A feature. Now, please help me and welcome our panelists. Panelists, please introduce yourself by stating your name, pronouns, title, the organization you work for, UNC degree, and a little bit about yourself. Tyrell, we will start with you.
Hi, folks. My name is Tyrell Allen. She, hers pronouns. I currently serve as the director of the LGBTQ Student Resource Center at the Auraria campus in Denver. If I am remembering the correct, I graduated in 2014 with a bachelor's degree in Africana Studies, and then I got my master's from UNC in 2016 in higher education and student affairs leadership. I'm here, I mind my business, I go to work, I go to bed.
Perfect. Talea, how about we go to you next?
Greetings, my name is Talea Banks. I graduated in 2018 with a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology and Anthropology. I am currently the Black Healing and Joy Coordinator at Soul to Soul Sisters. And yeah, I like to play and have fun.
Cody, would you like to go next?
Yes. Hi, my name is Cody. My pronouns are he, him, his. Graduated in 2019 with a bachelor's in human services and then 2020 with a bachelor's in nursing. Currently, I work at Denver Health in their pediatric emergency department, as well as it just changed the name, high-risk infectious disease program, which is pretty cool. What I do for fun, I work and I read. That is my go-to fun thing right now.
Thank you. Jose, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, folks. My name is Jose Hernandez Alvarado. My pronouns are he, him, and él. I currently serve as the Student Success Coordinator at El Centro at Colorado State University. I graduated from UNC in 2020 with my bachelor's in theater education. And then things that I like to do for fun. I like to play video games. I've been into Fortnite a little bit too hard these past couple of weeks. So that's what I'll share that I'm doing right now is playing a lot of Fortnite.
Awesome. And Dakota, how about you close us out?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dakota Perez. I use he, him, él pronouns. I graduated in 2022 with my bachelor's in business administration with an emphasis in marketing. I also got a certificate in music technology. So in my free time, I like to write. I started off at UNC as a music major. So anything music related. Just got Beyonce tickets and Boston Calling tickets as well, which is like a festival out here. I'm very excited. Paramore is headlining, so I'm thrilled, over the moon.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Now I will hand it over to Stephen, who will be facilitating this afternoon. Stephen.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry. I'm just in awe of Dakota's ability to get Beyonce tickets because that is like impossible right now. Let me go into my introduction. My name is Stephen Lovelace. My pronouns are they, them, and their. I currently serve as the director of the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center here at UNC. in one hat. In the other hat, I also serve as the lead for teaching, education, and outreach for the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion as well too. And I'm super excited to be here wearing my GSRC hat today, and to quite honestly see all of these amazing faces, because these are the folks who have made queer life on our campus happen, and who have made folks feel comfortable and safe, all because of the individuals who are about to talk to you today. And so you're going to hear some pretty incredible experiences from folks, and I value their stories completely and all their contributions, because we would not be sitting in our beautiful Bonnie house here on 10th Ave if not for every single individual who you're going to hear from today. So I am going to go ahead and jump straight into things. Oh, I need to mention that I am also a UNC Bear and am currently an active PhD student. I am in my 5th year of my PhD program, set to finish next year in May of 24. So I am also an active student. So we're going to get things started off today. I have some questions for our panelists, but we'll also be taking Q&A from folks who are watching. So we will watch that Q&A to make sure that we incorporate those questions as well too. But we do have some prepared questions. I'm going to start it off for our panel today with our first prepared question, which is, how did your UNC experience help you launch into your career and arrive at your current role? And so I'm going to let our panelists marinate on that for just a moment. And then I believe we have Tyrell who's going to kick us off. If you're comfortable with that, Tyrell, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, so I work in higher education, and when I was at UNC, I pretty much worked everywhere that I could. When I think about those experiences, though, the ones that stick out the most are my experiences in the cultural and resource centers. So I worked at the Garvey when I was in undergrad. I also worked at what is now the Center for Women and Gender Equity when I was a graduate student. And I also worked at the GSRC as well. And those experiences in particular really like built my love of cultural and resource centers, and frankly made that my dream job. Like I'm literally in what has been my dream job for a really long time. And I think that a lot of that is because of the experiences that I had at UNC, particularly around building gender and sexuality curriculum and all of the work that those centers do and did.
Absolutely, Tyrell. And I'm going to take 2 seconds to be like, because of this human, oh my gosh, because of Tyrell, there is so much work that has been done on our campus because of this human. And I'm just going to take a moment to thank them publicly and on the record and on camera, because their work on gender and sexuality has made a significant impact here at UNC. So sorry, had to do the props. Talea, would you like to speak to your experience?
I would love to. I'm going to echo a little bit of what Tyrell was saying, that working in the Garvey and really focusing my work on my people and what they look like, it taught me a lot about how to center and uplift and heal and care for my community, and that I could get paid for it. And then mixing in my anthropology degree, I learned that really studying our desires and our needs was essential in the liberation and the becoming of Black people. And that's kind of where my work is situated, and believing that we can have fun and heal and talk our shit and keep it going. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can cuss, but
you do. I don't know. As the moderator, I'm saying you don't have to apologize. So just move forward. Yay! Alumni folks might be smiling at me right now. So thank you for sharing your experience. Cody, would you like to share your UNC experience and how that might have helped to launch your career?
Yeah. So I've had so much time to think about this question, and here I am. I think so. I was in the nursing program, and they did a really excellent job at kind of listening to us and advocating for us. And so I really wanted to do my senior practicum in kind of an exciting environment. And so they fought for me to get a place at Denver Health. And now I work at Denver Health in that exact department. And then also just echoing what everyone else said, you know, I worked at the GSRC and kind of everywhere else as well. And I think it was important for me to find mentors within these places like, you know, Steven or Paige, which I don't know if she works there anymore, but she's fantastic, who were there to kind of guide me throughout my college experience and even now as an alumni, kind of my work experience.
Thank you, Cody. And yes, Paige Johnson is still here doing the good work. Jose, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think very similarly to a lot of these folks, I still work in higher education. So I work at CSU's version of the Cesar Chavez Cultural Center, so serving Latinx students on campus. I also, it was important for me when I was an undergrad to make sure that I found folks where I could be authentic and do self-discovery, self-reflection, self-liberation, and deconstruct notions of how we've been socialized to think and like maneuver life. And so I was able to engage in a lot of that in undergrad, particularly when I worked at the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center, when I was an orientation leader, was on Senate, and did a like catalyst social justice retreats. And so a lot of that sparked my fire and want to liberate students and engage in the liberation of students as they engage in higher education. And I knew that I wanted to do that with a community that resonated with me or like that has similar identities as myself. And so it was important for me to be able to give back to my community. And so after graduating from UNC, I got my master's in student affairs and higher education at Colorado State University, and then ended up staying at CSU. And all of that is because my experiences at UNC allowed me to like be a candidate for a graduate program, and to now be in the position that I'm at. So.
Thank you, Jose. And last but certainly not least, Dakota.
Yeah, so I realized I didn't mention what I do. So I'm currently the DEI Student Engagement Coordinator at Boston University in the College of Arts and Sciences. So essentially, I'm doing a lot of things surrounding DEI-centered student programming and communications and serving as a liaison between our office and the DEI Student Council. So it's a lot of supporting student activists, as a lot of us, if not all of us, were as students. And so I found a lot of that through my time at the GSRC. Similar to Jose, like being an orientation leader. And I also worked with the Alumni Center as well as literally anywhere and everywhere. But the marketing department as well on campus. I had an internship and then worked professionally there. Like all of these things at UNC, and the ability to go between them all. So I'm not going to say effortlessly, but like with ease, the connections that you can build within the UNC network really, really helped me in building the skills that I needed to be able to get where I'm at right now. Like it truly, in hindsight, set me up for the amount of success that I have been able to achieve in not even a year post-graduation. I'm so thankful to specifically Steven for hyping me up so much. So if anything from this, like take away the cultural and resource centers at UNC, like they are definitely an amazing place to start.
Yay! This is just all shameless so that you can go out and get big famous jobs and then contribute back to the GSRC. Sorry. Yay! I appreciate all your answers. Thank you for talking about your UNC experiences. You know, as someone who's interacting with current students, I got a bunch of seniors right now, and they're all trying to get ready for career and thinking about that next step. And so I'm wondering if you all can think of either one or two things that you incorporate right now into your work that's helped you to be successful in your job. Because it's one thing to like think about it theoretically. It's another thing to practically be in that job. So I'm curious about your own practices of what you do that helps you be successful. And I think this go around, we're starting with Talea.
Absolutely. I feel like there's so many different practices that I have taken away from UNC that have helped me become successful in my role. And one of them, not surprisingly, but surprisingly, was breath work and the power of my mind and like being able to understand it. Shout out to the counseling center and providing free therapy and DBT and all of those things, because in the process of finding a job, being able to like breathe through that process and like understand what's happening and control my emotions was really important. And then I think another thing would be vulnerability and honesty for me to say where I'm at, what I can contribute, and what my capacity is. Shout out to Talia Carroll, who really helped understand like the diligence of being honest and about what can happen and what we can do. And so those are things that I still play with and I still incorporate that help me build strong space for myself and for my teams that I interact with.
Oh, such great advice. That was wonderful. And I'm going to text Dr. Carroll and tell them they got a shout out today. They will love that. Okay, who's up next? Cody.
This is also kind of like a tricky question. I think one of what most people can attest to in this Zoom is that was never historically a patient person, and like would really love immediate results, and kind of worked on that through, once again, cultural and resource centers and the people that I knew well. And so then when I was job searching, I knew what I wanted to do and where I wanted to work. And so for me, like being patient and waiting for the opportunity that maybe wasn't perfect, because I don't know if you'll ever find that, but finding an opportunity that worked well for me, and waiting for that. And then I eventually found it, and now here I am. I also want to say one thing that really helped me in job searching and in my current practice is just, self-care and self-love. You will mess up, you will make mistakes, and being able to be okay with that and move on has been super important for me.
Oof, all the head nods when you said that. Let me tell you, everyone's like, yes, absolutely. Thank you for bringing those important points up, Cody. About Jose, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think something that continues to be really important for me in my like area of work and positions that I hold is to make intentional time to be with community. Because I think it's really hard to do the work sometimes when you feel alone, particularly when it comes to advocating for students. And so I find it really important for me to be able to be intentional about the time that I share with folks and who I share that time with. Because I like to be re-energized and feel all the emotions with people who make me feel good and people who kind of help keep the fire alive inside of me when it sometimes feels like it's being put out. And so I think it's really important for folks to find their community and find people and spaces where they feel like they can be authentic and they feel like they can navigate systems of oppression easier, right? When we're with community and we're taking care of each other. And so that's what I would share.
Yes, I'm sensing a theme here, y'all, of community and finding balance and self-care. This is greatly appreciated. Dakota, did you have things you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, I think a huge piece that I've taken away from my experience at UNC too was to really like sit back and be patient, though it is so not me, and listen. Like doing DEI work is half of the actual action, and the other half is just sitting and listening and empathizing and trying to hear people and their experiences. I think that was one of the biggest things that I was exposed to at UNC that I was able to take with me, in many aspects, not even just professionally.
Wonderful. Great advice, Dakota. Tyrell, you want to round us out, please?
Something I try to do a lot in my work is not making assumptions. So I'm someone who is perpetually seek clarity when it feels like there isn't any. My boss will tell you, my team will tell you, like pretty much anyone I work with will say that I'm constantly asking questions to make sure that I like fully understand a thing and or to make sure that we're all on the same page. It helps me manage my own expectations. It also helps me with conflict, right? And not assuming that someone is like out to get me and or has like ill intent. But it really helps me like stay focused on like the various things that need my attention in a clear and helpful way.
Beautiful professional advice. I have heard that explained sometimes as the story I'm telling myself. Like we will often generate narratives in our head, and when we ask questions, we get the real story instead of the story I'm telling ourselves. What a great professional piece of advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, y'all, we're getting into the real stuff now, the things that I have seniors asking me about all the time, which is we're part of the queer community. We're part of this community, and part of that means that we have to utilize skills and insights to navigate the world of work differently than heterosexual and cisgender people. We just do. And so my question to you all is, do you experience any kind of barriers or setbacks? And if so, how have you kind of overcome them? How do you find yourself navigating your workplace as a queer person? And we're gonna start with that super easy question with Cody.
I love it. So I don't know if you've like seen like the TikTok trends of like all the mean girls in high school become nurses. And historically, like that is very true. So I started off in the neonatal ICU at university, which was kind of always the dream job, right? And I got it, and after a couple months, I kind of, hated going to work, and it took some reflecting and talking to, some friends, but I was the only out queer person there. I was the only younger person that worked there, and it was very isolating, and it was very, yeah, I'll go with isolating, and I just kind of thought that's how nursing was. And then I transferred over to Denver Health, which is one of the main, queer healthcare providers for Colorado. And it felt completely different. They had queer groups that you can be a part of. They respected pronouns in the charts, like the little things like that that made it feel more community based. And people weren't mean to me, which was fantastic. And so I didn't realize how important like a queer accepting space would be for queer people, which I know sounds kind of silly. But for me, it turned out to be very important in my professional career.
Absolutely. And Cody, you brought up so many good points. One of the points I just want to highlight is that we will think of a profession and then we automatically have assumptions around whether that profession will be welcoming or not, right? Like, so I've had people tell me, oh, well, they're going into teacher ed, so it'll be welcome, or, oh, they're going into nursing and it'll be welcome. And I'll have to say, it depends, right? It depends on where you're going and where they get the job and what identities they hold that are visible and not visible. So I really appreciate you highlighting that point. It's very important. How about Jose? I think you're up next. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty fortunate in my areas of work where I've been employed at to be in spaces where I'm not the only queer person, particularly in my space right now. All the professional staff members that work at El Centro identify as queer. And so, and they're also Latinx. And so that has been really important for me and has been great for me to be able to be in community with folks who hold a lot of similar identities as myself. What I will say about that is that oftentimes, because we all identify as queer, I think administration and even students sometimes are like, I can't go into that space because it's too queer, right? Thinking about like the intersectionality that exists there and the intersection of identities in being queer and being Latinx. And so that has been really interesting to navigate. And we've definitely seen some pushback, I think, from student engagement, but also like faculty and staff, right? Because we know that there's a lot of things that like within the Latinx ed community that need to be addressed and handled. But I think a pushback continues to be like faculty and staff sometimes make it hard for us to do our jobs, right? Because we are queer and Latinx, and some of those faculty and staff members uphold systems of oppression and toxic masculinity and machista. And so sometimes it gets difficult, and we have to do the work regardless. And so I would say that, yeah, it's those have been some of the barriers that we've had to overcome. But regardless, I think we find power in a lot of the pride that we have in terms of being queer and Latinx on campus.
Thank you so much for sharing. And what a unique experience too, because we're always like prepping ourselves, I think a lot of times, for that deeply immersive heterosexual experience. And we're not thinking about what happens if we're immersed in a queer experience, but then we're trying to make that experience accessible for everyone, right? So that's a very unique story, and I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, Dakota, thoughts?
Yeah, I think honestly, I have had a phenomenal time being queer in the jobs that I've worked since UNC, which has been, I've been very lucky for that. My current role, my supervisor is also queer. My previous role before this one, supervisor, was also queer. So there's been a lot of community and understanding in that. I think it definitely is worth doing the research into where you're applying as a company, but also even a department, right? So being at BU, they have a long history of homophobia, president who is very homophobic outwardly. And so that doesn't look phenomenal, but looking into what the work that they're doing currently and who's running the place currently, what or who I'm working under, all of that comes into play as well, not necessarily just the organization at large. So really doing some of that research, and I found it helpful to be transparent on my resume. So I have the GSRC listed explicitly as me helping queer students in various capacities on my resume, so that I know that if somebody is going to be discriminatory in any way, despite it being protected by law, folks will still do it. They can just do it before they even have to talk to me, and I don't have to worry in that regard. So that's what I've chosen to do. And that's something that I learned from the mentoring program through the GSRC. And it really has benefited me.
Thank you so much, Dakota. And I think it's interesting, like your job process is like our coming out process, right? It's like we're constantly coming out, and at work, it's the same thing. It's from the time that we apply to every single day where there's a new employee or you have to interact with somebody new. Do I come out? Do I not come out? These are things that we have to consider within our community. Thank you for highlighting that, Dakota. Okay, Tyrell, thoughts?
Speaking of coming out, great segue. So I actually came out as trans well after I graduated from UNC. So most of my time at UNC, I believed myself to be and existed in that space as a cis gay man. And when I came out when I was like 25 2005, so like a few years after I had a lot of anxiety around like, what is the world going to say? How is this small northern Colorado community going to make sense of me? Because at the time I was working at CSU. And I sat with, you know, while I was misgendered and I still am misgendered fairly regularly to different folks. And, you know, I really sat with how much I internalized a lot of fears and a lot of sort of toxic mentality about like myself and how I navigate the world. Like everything felt impossible. Everything felt wasn't going to be for me, right? And so I really had to sit with myself and do some self-work around like, girl, you're allowed to be here, right? And like, first of all, you're everything. Second of all, like, be, right? And so I had to work to build not only a network of folks who could reinforce that message for me, but also like maintain a sense of self that allows me to get up every single day, put my earrings in and tackle the world, right, to the best of my ability. And some days it's really, really hard, and other days it's really, really effortless. But I know that like, regardless, I'm happy to be here more than I've ever been.
That was beautiful. I have nothing to say other than that was just gorgeous, and I loved it. Thank you for that incredible advice. And the thoughtfulness around like, this is a life, coming out is a lifelong process, and our understanding of self is a lifelong process that will have a direct impact on how you interact at work. And it's important to consider that. Because as queer people, we know that our identities are not fixed, and we understand that. And thinking about how we will navigate a working world as we navigate our identities is incredibly important. Thank you for bringing that point up. Okay, Talea.
I just also want to affirm, honor, and just say thank you for sharing, Tyrell. Absolutely, absolutely. For me, I have viewed my queerness as almost as this superpower that straight people benefited from me being in the space and being queer. And so I really focused on, when I was looking for places to work, I was looking for a place that honored queer people, and like that being the baseline, because our first coming out, and then there's like 20 more in between then. And so I knew that I was just as coming out as like a lesbian, that was just the like very tip of the iceberg, and I knew there was so much more. And so I currently, most of my, like, out of 7 coworkers, only like 1 is straight, and so maybe 2, it's 2 are straight, but it really has allowed for me to continue to explore other parts of my queerness in terms of my gender and how I want to exist in relationships. And when we think about working and like something that we do from like 9 to 5-ish, in wanting to have more spaces that gap that, and really being able to just say who we are and speak has really been really important for me. That even though I work with all of these queer people, our organization was still founded by straight Black women that are still learning how to queer an organization and like what that means. And so yeah, keep saying the things, keep coming out, keep being, are the things I would say here.
Thank you. That was absolutely wonderful. And I so appreciate your comments as well, too. We are going to keep moving forward just so that we can get through all of our questions today. So I'm going to push us out to our next one, which I think is very helpful. Kind of a lesson learned. We all do we've had difficult lessons at work, and that can be tough. But I would love, and I'm sure a lot of our seniors would love to hear, like, what are the hard lessons? Maybe one lesson that you've learned at work, and how might what advice could you give to bears now that would help them avoid that same kind of difficult situation? I think we're starting out with Jose.
Yeah, this is a really good question. I think, in higher education, when I worked in undergrad and when I was in my master's program, I was like, oh my gosh, everyone who's in higher education just has to like be like rooted in social justice, equity work. Like they have to know the foundation, they have to know what they're doing, how to best support students, how to like liberate folks and work to like actively deconstruct those systems. And I learned a very difficult lesson that like that just is not the case. And sometimes it's like our own people that are like continuously causing harm. And that has been really hard for me. And that's something that I've been learning this whole like academic year, is that like sometimes like all skin folk are not kinfolk. And that has been really hard for me to like deal with and figure out, right? Because I'm like, you should get it. Like, you should get it. Like, why are you making things harder for all of us? And so I think that has been really hard for me. And I would say like a way to like avoid that is, it's hard. I think that that's a really tricky and hard thing to like try and actively avoid, because you don't really know until you're in it, right? That like, oh, this person is going to cause more harm than they're going to like work to do change and actively do like good work. And I think a lot of a way of like avoiding that is to like, again, find your people. I have found my people in my division that I'm like, can you believe this just happened? Like, what is going on? Right. And we get together and we should talk and we go out and get drinks afterwards, right? Because sometimes we just need that. But it's also just like being able to find the people that you're gonna like, you can look at each other in meetings and be like, oh, we're gonna talk about this after, right? And so, yeah, that's what I would share as kind of being a difficult lesson that I've learned, is sometimes not all people are going to be rooted in social justice, equity, and work. And sometimes those people are going to be people within our community, right? And also balancing that it's not their fault. Like it's literally, they've been socialized by these systems of oppression and white supremacy to uphold white supremacist values because it's a form of survival. And so also wanting to like balance that, like they're just trying to survive too. And it's also hard to balance that. So, yeah.
Whew, you just dropped some realness on us. I appreciate that. Not just because there are queer people does not mean that the organization is queer friendly. And that is real and needs to be heard by the folks listening to this webinar. Thank you for bringing that up, Jose. We're jumping next into Dakota.
Yeah, that was very, very real. I think, honestly, the role that I'm currently in is still so new that I'm trying to take this advice for myself as well and be intentional with how much of myself I am putting into my work. I think that it's so important for me to remind myself as I continue in this role, and for everyone to like really take care of yourself, and not in the artificial, superficial, like self-care way of doing a face mask and reading a book or whatever, but like do what makes your soul happy and don't let the work that you're doing consume you, and your happiness and your queerness and your sense of self. Doing DEI work is so fulfilling in so many ways, but it doesn't mean that it comes without a cost to yourself, or for me personally. So I'm trying to make sure that I balance those things as I move forward.
Whew, and you bring up emotional labor, right? There are a lot of folks who are on this panel who do diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And I think what you're talking about there is the invisible labor that goes into doing DEI work on a day-to-day basis. I don't want to take anything else away from other panelists, so I will let them speak to that more if they would like to. Next up, I think we have is Tyrell.
Yeah, mine is actually really similar to Jose's. I think about when I was a student and when I was a new professional, every single instance of someone saying something problematic or causing some version of harm, I would respond to all of those instances with the same level of energy and it was exhausting, right? And I think I have this practice of when people do and say raggedy things, I call them out and I distance myself from them and I call it a day, right? And it wasn't until it actually was like someone who was super close to me causing harm and doing things that are problematic that I invited myself to think more critically about like everything doesn't deserve the same kind of energy. And in fact, sometimes I have a version of like personal responsibility in how I address something, right? So I think in that instance, I was able to learn that like I am as a person who supervises people, as a person who is in a position of power, I have a certain level of responsibility to be to have a certain kind of grace and education that allows us to continue the work. Because again, not everything deserves, a cancellation and or a 2 years of distance, right? And so that is a lesson I'm still learning and making sense of as a professional, but I want to talk about that.
Thank you so very much to speaking to that and to it's almost I resonate with it. It's like it can be easy to, and I don't want to put words in your experience, but burn bridges when people are just, it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? But if you're staying at an institution or any company for a long period of time, you are playing a long game. And so it feels great to torch things, but it is not exactly helpful to make change. And Tyrell, if I in any way did you injustice by describing that, please correct me. Perfect. Okay, our next person up, I think who's going to share a lesson is Talea.
One lesson that I want to share is boundaries of capacity. The world everywhere in every dimension has something that needs fixing. And it's when I first started doing this work, I was like, let me try and do it all. And then one day somebody came up to me and said, what about this? And I was like, what do you mean? What about this? Like, I cannot do it all. And it was my breaking point. And I just had to collapse all of the things that I was doing and reassess my capacity because I was working beyond that without actually consulting myself on my energy levels and like how I was feeling. And so really, I would say connect with your body and your mind and your heart and your spirit and see if it's a full body yes. And if it's a no, like listen to that no and see where it's coming from. Like we can't fix everything. We can fix what we can fix, but really releasing it out of our control to let it be and hold the other people accountable to fixing it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Y'all look up the concept of compassion fatigue. Sorry, this is my dissertation is on compassion fatigue and diversity, equity, and inclusion, folks. And y'all are just talking all about it. It's wonderful. Okay, Cody, tell us a little bit more about a difficult lesson.
Yeah, I think a lot of queer folks, especially myself, go into the professional world looking for acceptance and friendships. And I kind of caught myself where that was almost my number one priority. I went into nursing and I was like, okay, I know this is a heterosexual space for the most part. How can I be accepted? How can I build these friendships? And it wasn't until, one of my queer coworkers said, try focusing on being good at what you do and the rest will come naturally. And I found that to be very true. It's something I'm still continuing to learn, but once I started working towards like, how do I be the best nurse I can? Friendships just happen naturally. And, for those who don't accept me, screw them. I don't care. Or at least I'm learning not to care, right? But those who do accept me will always be there for when, like many other people have said, to build community or talk about the day or whatever happens.
Yeah, absolutely, Cody. And you're just bouncing off of kind of this theme, which we're going to ask our next question about, which is community, essentially. Like all of you have mentioned the absolute necessity of needing community at work, or finding that community and finding your people. So I guess what my question to you all is how did you find that network of people? How did you come across those folks? How did you find the folks you could look at in the meeting and know you'd have that after conversation with? And why are those relationships super important in your industry? Many of you have talked about the why, but I'm curious about how you built that network. I think we're going to start with Dakota this time around.
So BU has this out list and a center for LGBTQ plus faculty and staff. So there's a built-in way for me when I entered to be able to network and see who is in my meetings and like cross check the meeting list with the out list to see who's a part of the community and just has an inherent understanding, which has been very helpful moving across the various departments that I've been working with. I think that that's really one of the most clear ways that I've been able to build that support so far.
That's a wonderful resource. Thanks for letting us know that some organizations have that. Tyrell?
So I don't enjoy most people. I am an introvert. I like to mind my business. I go to work, go to bed. I'm someone who, in my work, I try to get clear about, like, at the end of the day, what is my organization's goals and what is my part in that? And then I try to connect with other organizations where we have, something in common and or where we could like be mutually beneficial to one another. And I tried to get clear and creative about how I like tell that story when I need to, right? If I just like make connections. I'm also someone where whenever I join an organization, I meet with a lot of people to just learn like what's going on and like the history and the people, the place, etc. And so those are the things that I do most often, but I do it in doses that allow me to still be sane and, like I said, go home, go to bed.
Yes, and thank you for speaking for the introverts in the room and who are listening out there, because not everyone is a super extrovert and building those networks can look very differently. Thank you. Up next, Talea.
Networking actually gives me anxiety, like I'm sure a huge role. I absolutely agree that sometimes the traditional way is overwhelming, but for me, I was actually attending the events that my organization was putting on. And I was like, wow, I love this. This would be so cool to work here. And at the time I was getting my master's, and it provided such a healing space away from the university or the towers. And I was like, wow, this would just be so awesome to work for. And then as soon as they were hiring, they recognized me. I had engaged in some of their programming, doing healing work and my play work that I was doing. And so they knew who I was a little bit, and they knew what I offered in terms of theory and thought. And when it came time to apply, they literally were like, we see the ways in which you take care of community, and we would love to take care of you in this way. And I literally cried in the interview. So show up to the communities and spaces that you want to be in and you want to work for, and they'll need you someday.
That is amazing advice. That is super amazing advice. Literally, half of you were hired by me because you showed up and hung out in the GSRC. So yes, it's my job to hire every queer person on campus. But yes, hang out in the places you want to work if you can, if it makes sense. Thank you for saying that one. Cody?
Yes. So kind of like I guess a two-part answer. With where I work now at Denver Health, it is very queer centered, and that's kind of one of their missions. And so they have a organization on campus that is for queer employees to hang out, do improvements around the hospital, things like that. So I was very fortunate to be able to be a part of that and find space there. With that being said, not every place you work is going to be queer centered or queer friendly. And so kind of what I did at my last hospital, who didn't have these organizations, was I really worked on building community in my personal life. So I found queer friendships, focused on that, joined a gay volleyball league, which I'm way too out of shape for, but it was fantastic. And so while I wasn't able to find community at work, I was able to, kind of leave that place and go find community in my friendships. And then my sister works at the GSRC, so if I needed to have social justice conversations, I was able to talk to them and their friends about that as well.
Absolutely. And so important, Cody. What a great point of sometimes it's just not going to be possible. And that's because of the organization or because of the profession. But that does not mean that you still don't take care of yourself as a queer person and figure out where you find that community and support. Great point. Jose, you want to round us out on this question?
Yeah, I think the way I build networks and community is I'm an entertainer at heart and I like to make people laugh. And so I just like to crack some jokes and make people laugh. And I'm whoever gets this joke is my person or whatever. And that's kind of how I found my people at my current job was I just cracking jokes. I'm whoever laughs, I know that's my person. I can hang out with them. And so I did a lot of that, but also I did a lot of intentional outreach for people. When I got hired on here at CSU, they kind of put all of the new hires in a little cohort. And so we all went around and learned about the other diversity programs and offices on campus. And that was really helpful because that's really where I met one of my really good friends now, who works in the same division as myself. And so it was just nice to get to know new people and know that we were both trying to figure out this new system and how we were going to operate within it. And we both operate from a lens of social justice, equity, community care. And so that I knew immediately that she was going to be a person that I could network with and be in community with. And I think also it's important to stay connected with the people previously, right? Connections from UNC, that has been really important for me. Stephen and I text probably way too much. And then Paige as well, right? And even now I'm in the process of doing some job transition stuff. And all of that is happening because of some networks and connections that I continue to have. And so I think it's also important to nourish and put energy into connections and community that you have had previously and that you continue to have, because that's also really important in terms of self-care, community care, growth, development, all the things. So
absolutely. And such a good point to bring up too is I have worked with lots of folks, and the GSRC continues to support folks beyond their graduation, just sometimes with brainstorming conversations and thinking about career paths. So if you're listening, you can still call us and reach out for support. Once a bear, always a bear. So last question for today is, can you provide kind of a final quick thought or advice for our bears who are currently seeking a job in your industry? And I think we're starting this go around with Tyrell.
I think can you hear me? Great.
Yeah.
My headphones died. I will say quickly, do your research on your organization. Keep learning yourself and don't be afraid to be wrong.
Beautiful, wonderful advice. Talea, how about yourself?
I'll just say, keep a part of yourself for yourself. So much of my undergrad experience was giving to papers and so much of the academy and then giving to my jobs that I just wish somebody would have said, just keep 10 cents for yourself.
Ah, wonderful advice. Cody?
Yeah, nursing is a very interesting field where it's like, I said earlier, be patient and find the job that you want. And also sometimes nursing is almost like you get one or two offers and you have to go where you're going to go. So just get whatever experience you can. And then the minute it makes sense, get out of there and go find that job that you want, because it will be out there, and nursing isn't always as terrible as it seems. So there are good people, there are good organizations, and you'll find the place you belong eventually.
Good advice. Thank you, Cody. Jose?
Yeah, I think when it comes particularly to like interviewing for positions or like doing your research, is to like ask really hard and intentional questions of the people that you are looking at potentially working for. Super important. Ask the hard questions. Don't be afraid to kind of scare them a little bit. Like, it's what they deserve. And like, also you want to know, like, is this a place where I can be successful and see myself being authentic in? And so I would just say, yeah, ask the hard questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Jose. And last, Dakota?
Jose took my advice.
Okay.
I will sort of elaborate on that. Like, make sure that there is room in whatever you do for growth, and that your organization is going to be able to support you and support you financially to do that growing, whether it's salary negotiation or conferences and anything for like professional development and career like trajectory. Make sure that you take advantage of UNC's resources when it comes to like checking over your resume and all of those sorts of things. Like, I truly, until I reformatted my resume, I wasn't getting interviews. So who cares about thinking about jobs when you can't even get to talk to someone? So use those resources while you can to get your foot in the door.
Absolutely, Dakota. And before I kick it back over to Teresa, I just want to say really quickly, thank you all to our amazing panelists. I have to say again, the people that you are seeing on this screen right now, they are the reason that queer people are accepted and loved on our campus, because of the work that they have put in, the time, energy, and effort. There have been years and years and years of just student advocacy around queer issues on our campus. And without the student work and day-to-day go and plug and do all the hard work, we would not be having this beautiful conversation with all of you today. So I just want to say thank you from the absolute bottom of my heart for all of the work that you have done to create this space on our campus here at UNC. Teresa?
Yes, thank you all so much. It was awesome to hear y'all's perspective and y'all's stories. So thank you all. To our panelists and moderator, thank you all for joining us today. It has been and always is an honor and pleasure to host fellow Bears and hear about their UNC experience, unique identities, career paths, and industry insights. Throughout the semester, we'll be hosting virtual alumni career panels. And to learn more, you can visit www.unco.edu/alumni/careers. I hope you all have a great evening. And if we can all do it together and say go Bears, that would be awesome. So y'all can unmute yourselves. And go Bears. Oh, wait, no. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Go Bears.
Go Bears.